My name is Marcus Thompson, and I need to tell you about the worst decision I ever made in my life. A decision that cost me everything that truly mattered. Grace, we need to talk, I said that evening, my voice cold and distant, words I wish I could take back forever. My wife looked up from the baby blanket she was knitting, her 7 months pregnant belly round and full with our child. I can still see the way she sensed the gravity in my tone. What's wrong, Marcus? I'm leaving. The words fell like stones, and I watched them shatter everything we had built together. Grace's knitting needles clattered to the floor. What do you mean, leaving? Leaving for where? I'm leaving you, Grace. I found someone who can elevate my status, someone who can give me the life I deserve. Even now, 15 years later, I hate myself for how merciless my voice was, how I avoided looking at her shocked face. Marcus, what are you talking about? We're having a baby in 2 months. Our baby. That's exactly the problem, I said, my voice hardening with each word. I can't be tied down by financial burdens when I have opportunities to build something greater. I've already filed for divorce. I won't be providing any support. You'll need to figure this out on your own. I watched Grace struggle to stand, her pregnant body shaking. Financial burdens? Is that what you call our child? Our family? I found a sugar mummy, Grace. Isabella Rodriguez. She's a millionaire with properties across Lagos and Abuja. She's offering me partnership in her company, a penthouse in Banana Island, everything I've ever dreamed of. But she wants me free of complications. The silence that followed still haunts my dreams. Grace stared at me as if she was seeing a stranger, and she was right. I had become someone I didn't recognize. You're leaving your pregnant wife for a sugar mummy? Grace whispered, her hands protectively covering her belly. That night, I packed my belongings while Grace sobbed in our bedroom. I left my key on the kitchen table and walked out of our modest Surreal apartment, out of Grace's life, and away from my unborn child. 15 years later, I would discover the true cost of this decision. Let me tell you my whole story, because it will change how you think about success forever. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell because you won't want to miss stories like this. And comment below where you're watching from and the local time where you're watching. I love connecting with viewers from all around the world. Let me take you back to where this nightmare started. 15 years ago, I was 30 years old, full of ambition but short on the connections needed to elevate my career beyond my mid-tier construction firm job in Victoria Island. I remember sitting at my drafting table in our small 2-bedroom apartment in Surreal, sketching architectural designs by candlelight when the power went out, which was almost every evening. My wife Grace would move quietly through our tiny kitchen, still in her nurse's uniform after 12-hour shifts at Lagos University Teaching Hospital. We were struggling, but we were happy. At least, I thought we were happy. Grace never complained about our financial situation, never made me feel inadequate for not being able to provide more. She would hum this gentle tune while cooking our simple dinners of rice and stew, the same melody that had drawn me to her 3 years earlier when we met at a friend's wedding. The night Grace told me she was pregnant was supposed to be the happiest night of my life. When she whispered, "We're going to have a baby," I felt pure joy wash over me. I swept her into my arms and spun her around our tiny living room, both of us laughing with delight. But as days passed, reality crept in like Lagos traffic, slowly, then all at once. My salary of 120,000 Nigerian nairas per month barely covered our current expenses. How would we afford baby clothes, medical bills, childcare, and eventually school fees? The weight of financial responsibility pressed down on me like the humid Lagos air, making it hard to breathe. That's when the devil came knocking, dressed in designer clothes and driving a Mercedes. 3 weeks after Grace announced her pregnancy, my boss sent me to the grand opening of Azure Heights, a luxury residential complex in Victoria Island. "Network," he said. "Maybe we can secure future contracts." The event was everything I had dreamed of being part of: crystal champagne flutes, catered delicacies, and Lagos's elite mingling beneath sparkling chandeliers. I felt out of place in my best suit, which suddenly seemed shabby compared to the tailored perfection around me. That's when I first saw her, Isabella Rodriguez. She commanded attention without trying. A woman in her early 50s with silver-streaked hair swept into an elegant chignon, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my annual salary. Gold jewelry caught the light as she gestured, discussing property investments with captivated businessmen. Impressive building, isn't it? Her voice was smooth, cultured, with hints of a Spanish accent. I turned, shocked that this powerful woman was speaking to me. Yes, ma'am. The structural engineering is quite remarkable. Her eyes sparkled with interest. You're an architect? Yes, ma'am. Marcus Thompson. I extended my hand, trying to hide my nervousness. Isabella Rodriguez, Rodriguez Properties. I own this building, along with several others across Lagos and Abuja. My jaw nearly dropped. This woman wasn't just wealthy, she was a real estate mogul. Tell me, Marcus, she continued, stepping closer, what would you do differently if you had designed this building? For the next hour, I found myself in the most intellectually stimulating conversation of my career. Isabella didn't just listen, she challenged my ideas, asked probing questions, and seemed genuinely impressed by my innovative approaches. I have a proposition for you, she said as the evening wound down. I'm always looking for fresh architectural talent. Would you be interested in consulting work? The pay would be substantial. My heart raced. How substantial? 500,000 Nigerian nairas per project, to start. Depending on your performance, we could discuss a more permanent arrangement. The number hit me like lightning. That was more than 4 times my monthly salary, for just one project. I should have said no. I should have walked away. But I was blinded by the promise of financial freedom. What started as professional consultation quickly became something more complex, and I was too intoxicated by the lifestyle to see the trap being set. Isabella began inviting me to exclusive restaurants in Ikoyi, where single meals cost more than Grace's weekly grocery budget. She would arrive to pick me up in different luxury cars, a gleaming Mercedes one day, a silver BMW the next. You have so much potential, Marcus, she would say over expensive wine at Sky Restaurant and Lounge, the city lights twinkling below us. But you're trapped by circumstances that don't match your capabilities. At home, Grace noticed the changes immediately, and her questions felt like accusations. You've been working late a lot, she mentioned one evening, her hand resting on her growing belly, 4 months pregnant by then. Just networking, building connections for our future, I replied, unable to meet her eyes. The guilt was eating me alive, but Isabella's world was intoxicating. Isabella began showering me with gifts, expensive watches, tailored suits, the latest iPhone. She introduced me to Lagos's high society, where people casually discussed million naira investments over cocktails. For the first time in my life, I felt important, successful, worthy of respect. You could be living in Banana Island, Isabella whispered one evening as we stood on her penthouse balcony overlooking Lagos Lagoon. I'm offering you a partnership in my company, Marcus. But partnerships require commitment. Freedom from complications that might divide your attention. I knew exactly what she meant. The unspoken words hung in the air like heavy clouds before a storm, and I made the worst decision of my life. I chose to listen. Grace was 7 months pregnant when I destroyed our lives. Her belly had grown round and full, and she glowed with that radiant beauty of impending motherhood. She had started preparing our spare room as a nursery, hanging tiny clothes she had bought with money saved from working extra shifts. Looking back now, I realized she was doing everything to prepare for our child while I was planning to abandon them both. That evening when I came home to deliver the devastating news, Grace was knitting a baby blanket, something I can never forget. The image of her pregnant, hopeful, Creating something beautiful for our child while I was about to destroy her world still tortures me. After I told her I was leaving, after I watched her world crumble, after I saw the devastation in her eyes, I packed my belongings while she sobbed in our bedroom. The sound of her crying followed me as I carried my suitcases to the door. I left my key on the kitchen table, the same table where we had shared thousands of meals, where we had planned our future, where Grace had first told me she was pregnant. I walked out of that apartment, out of Grace's life, and away from my unborn child without looking back. I was too blinded by the promise of wealth to understand what I was truly leaving behind. I moved into Isabella's luxurious penthouse in Banana Island, complete with a swimming pool, private gym, and panoramic views of the Lagos coastline. Isabella gifted me a brand new Range Rover and enrolled me in exclusive business networking events. "See how much better this is," she would say as we attended high-profile parties at the Eco Hotel or dined at the most expensive restaurants in Ikoyi. "You were wasting your potential in that tiny apartment." I felt powerful, important, successful. I posted photos of my lavish lifestyle on social media, showing off expensive dinners and luxury vacations to Dubai and London, all funded by Isabella. I was living like a king, and I convinced myself I had made the right choice. For 2 years, I lived this fantasy. I worked on architectural projects for Isabella's company, designing luxury residential complexes and commercial buildings across Lagos and Abuja. The money flowed freely: expensive suits, fine dining, exotic vacations, and all the status symbols I had ever craved. But late at night, when Isabella was asleep beside me in our king-sized bed, I sometimes wondered about Grace. Had she given birth? Was the baby healthy? Was it a boy or girl? I pushed these thoughts away, convincing myself that I had chosen the path to success. I was wrong about everything. It started with small inconsistencies that I was too blinded by luxury to recognize. Land documents that seemed rushed. Building permits that were processed unusually quickly. Business meetings with individuals who seemed more like enforcers than investors. I told myself these were just the ways that wealthy people did business. I didn't ask questions because I didn't want to jeopardize my comfortable life. The truth hit like a thunderbolt when EFCC agents stormed Isabella's penthouse at dawn on a Tuesday morning. "Isabella Rodriguez and Marcus Thompson, you're under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and illegal land acquisition," the lead agent announced. I watched in shock as investigators seized computers, documents, and financial records. Isabella remained eerily calm, as if she had been expecting this moment, and I would soon learn why. The investigation revealed that Isabella's wealth came from a sophisticated land-grabbing scheme. She used forged documents to steal properties from unsuspecting families, then employed my architectural expertise to legitimize fraudulent developments. The luxury buildings we had designed were built on stolen land, sold to innocent buyers who would later lose everything. But Isabella's masterstroke was still coming. Within hours of our arrest, she produced a folder of documents, architectural plans, project approvals, and financial transactions, all bearing my forged signatures. She had been systematically framing me as the mastermind while positioning herself as my victim. "Marcus Thompson manipulated me," Isabella told investigators with crocodile tears. "He used his architectural credentials to legitimize fraudulent projects while I unknowingly funded them." My protests fell on deaf ears. Isabella had disappeared overnight, taking millions of naira with her and leaving behind a paper trail that made me look like the criminal mastermind. My assets were frozen. My reputation was destroyed. The woman I had abandoned my pregnant wife for had used me, framed me, and vanished, leaving me to face justice alone. I was sentenced to 12 years in Kirikiri maximum security prison. Prison stripped away every illusion I had built about success and power. In a cramped cell with 5 other inmates, wearing faded prison uniforms and eating watery rice and beans, I had nothing but time to think about the choices that had led me there. It was Baba Sool, an elderly man serving time for embezzlement, who became my unlikely teacher. "You know what your problem was," he asked one evening as we sat in the prison yard watching the sunset through barbed wire. "I trusted the wrong person," I replied bitterly. "No," Baba Sool shook his head. "Your problem was you forgot what real wealth looks like. Real wealth is a wife who loves you when you have nothing. Real wealth is children who respect you because you showed them integrity. Real wealth is a reputation built on character, not money." During those 5 long years, I learned skills in the prison workshop, earned my GED equivalent, and most importantly, began to understand the magnitude of what I had lost. I wondered about Grace constantly. Was she okay? Had she remarried? What about our child? I didn't even know if it was a boy or girl, or whether Grace had carried to full term after the trauma I had put her through. I wrote dozens of letters to Grace, but never sent them. What could I possibly say that would justify the pain I had caused? I walked out of Kirikiri prison on a humid Lagos morning in March, carrying only a small bag of belongings and 500 Nigerian nairas in my pocket. The world had changed dramatically during my incarceration. Smartphones were everywhere, social media dominated communication, and Lagos had grown even more congested and modern. I found a small room in a decrepit building in Mushin and got work as a night security guard at an office complex in Ikeja. The pay was barely enough for rent and food, but it was honest work, something I had forgotten the value of during my sugar mummy days. Through mutual acquaintances and careful inquiries, I slowly pieced together Grace's life during my absence. Each revelation hit me like a physical blow. Grace hadn't just survived, she had thrived beyond my wildest imagination. After struggling for the first few years as a single mother, Grace had returned to school part-time, earning advanced certifications in pediatric nursing. Her dedication caught the attention of hospital administrators, leading to promotions and increased responsibilities. She was now the head of pediatric nursing at Reddington Hospital, one of Lagos's most prestigious private medical facilities. Her salary was substantial, her reputation impeccable. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Grace had given birth to twins, and those boys were now 15 years old and absolutely extraordinary. I first saw David and Daniel at a public science exhibition at the University of Lagos. I had gone there hoping to catch a glimpse of Grace, not knowing that my children would be participants in the event. When I saw them, my knees nearly buckled. David, 15 years old, stood confidently beside a display showcasing his water purification system. The device was elegant in its simplicity, a solar-powered unit that could transform contaminated water into clean, drinkable water using technology he had designed himself. This system can process 500 liters of clean water per day using only solar energy, I heard David explain to fascinated judges. It could provide clean water for entire villages across rural Africa. I watched from a distance, my heart pounding. This brilliant young man was my son, a son I had never met, never taught, never encouraged. Beside David's scientific display, Daniel had set up an art exhibition featuring paintings and sculptures that captured the struggles and hopes of urban Lagos. His artwork was sophisticated, emotionally powerful, and mature beyond his 15 years. My art tells the stories of single mothers who work 2 jobs to feed their children, Daniel explained to visitors. It celebrates the strength of women who refuse to give up, even when the world abandons them. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Daniel's art was a tribute to Grace, to the mother who had raised them alone while their father chased material wealth. Both boys were tall, handsome, and carried themselves with quiet confidence. They spoke with intelligence and maturity that impressed every adult they encountered. They were everything I had dreamed my children might become, but achieved through Grace's guidance alone, despite my abandonment. What I witnessed at the university exhibition was just the beginning. Over the following months, as I discreetly followed news about my biological sons, their achievements continued to astound me. David's water purification system caught international attention. The United Nations invited him to present his invention at their Youth Innovation Summit in New York. Major technology companies began reaching out with partnership offers. Daniel's artwork was featured in a Lagos gallery exhibition that attracted international attention. His pieces sold for substantial amounts, with proceeds donated to organizations supporting single mothers. Grace, now 38 and more beautiful than ever, was invited to speak at medical conferences about her innovative pediatric care programs. She had also started a foundation providing scholarships for children of single mothers. The family I had abandoned was not just surviving, they were becoming internationally recognized for their contributions to society. And there was Dr. Samuel Adeyemi, a respected cardiovascular surgeon who had been part of their lives for nearly 8 years. He had met Grace when she was treating one of his young patients, and their professional relationship had blossomed into love. Dr. Samuel had been the father I chose not to be, attending school events, teaching the boys about integrity and hard work, providing the stable male influence they needed. When Dr. Samuel proposed to Grace, David and Daniel had been the ones who encouraged her to say yes. They respected him not because he had money or status, but because he had shown up consistently with love and support. The moment I had dreaded and secretly hoped for finally arrived. David's water purification system won the United Nations Youth Innovation Award, with a prize of $50,000 and guaranteed funding for implementation across Africa. The award ceremony was held at the Lagos International Convention Center, broadcast live across Nigeria and internationally. I managed to gain entry by working as additional security for the event. From my position in the back, hidden behind a concrete pillar, I watched my 15-year-old son walk confidently across the stage to receive recognition from world leaders. The bright stage lights blazed down as David stepped up to receive the award. His invention would soon provide clean drinking water to millions of children across Africa. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause as cameras flashed from every angle. My weathered hands trembled as I watched. I wore a faded security guard uniform, my once proud shoulders now stooped with the weight of regret. Tears streamed down my face as I watched my biological son, a boy I had never truly known, accept international recognition for an achievement that could have been our shared pride. Beside David on stage stood Daniel, whose artwork had been featured in galleries from New York to Paris. Their mother, Grace, radiant in an elegant emerald dress, beamed with pride as her sons were honored. Next to her stood Dr. Samuel, the man who had become the father I never chose to be. David's acceptance speech was humble, thoughtful, and mature beyond his years. "This invention isn't just mine," David said into the microphone, his voice clear and strong. "It belongs to every child who lacks access to clean water, every mother who walks miles to fetch water for her family, and especially to my own mother, who taught me that real success means using your gifts to serve others." The crowd erupted in applause. Grace wiped away tears of pride. Dr. Samuel beamed like the proud father he had become. As the crowd chanted David's name, my knees buckled. This was the moment that would haunt me forever, watching the legacy I had thrown away shine brighter than any amount of money I had ever chased. I hadn't just lost a wife and child 15 years ago. I had lost the opportunity to be part of something extraordinary. I had traded a legacy of love, achievement, and contribution for temporary material comfort that had ultimately destroyed me. 3 months after the UN ceremony, I finally gathered the courage to approach Grace. I waited outside Reddington Hospital after her shift, my heart hammering as I watched her emerge from the building. Grace stopped dead when she saw me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "Hello, Grace," I said quietly. "Marcus." Her voice was neutral, controlled. She looked older, more sophisticated, but the kind eyes I remembered were now guarded. "I heard you were released from prison." "I need to apologize," I began, but Grace raised her hand to stop me. "Apologize for what, Marcus? For abandoning me when I was pregnant? For never checking if your child was born alive? For disappearing for 15 years while I raised our sons alone?" Sons. My voice cracked. Twins. David and Daniel. You would know their names if you had ever cared enough to ask. The words hit me like physical blows. Grace, I know I made terrible mistakes. Mistakes. Grace's composure finally cracked, 15 years of suppressed pain surfacing. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. What you did wasn't a mistake, Marcus. It was a choice. You chose money over family. You chose a sugar mummy over your pregnant wife. I stood there, absorbing every word I deserved to hear. My sons don't need a father now, Grace continued. They have Dr. Samuel, who has been there for their first steps, first words, school plays, science fairs, and everything else you missed. They have a man who shows up, who loves them unconditionally, who teaches them integrity. I want to make amends, I pleaded. I want to be part of their lives. Grace looked at me with something that might have been pity. Marcus, you can't just walk back into a story you chose to leave. David and Daniel are remarkable young men, not because of you, but despite you. She turned to walk away, then paused. They know about you, of course. I told them the truth when they were old enough to understand. Do you know what David said when he learned his biological father had chosen money over family? I shook my head, afraid to hear the answer. He said, "Then he taught me something valuable without meaning to. He showed me exactly the kind of man I never want to become." With that, Grace walked to her car and drove away, leaving me standing alone on the sidewalk, finally understanding the full weight of my choices. I made one attempt to contact David and Daniel directly. I waited outside Lagos Baptist Academy, where they were both honor students. When the twins emerged from classes, my breath caught. They were so tall, so confident, so clearly my biological children. David carried a laptop bag filled with engineering textbooks, while Daniel's backpack was covered with art supplies. "David! Daniel!" I called out hesitantly. The boys turned, and I saw Grace's eyes looking back at me, intelligent, questioning, but not unkind. "Are you Marcus Thompson?" David asked directly. "I'm your father," I said, the words feeling strange and hollow in my mouth. "No," Daniel replied with quiet firmness. "Dr. Samuel is our father. You're the man who donated DNA." David, ever practical, studied me with scientific curiosity. "Why are you here?" "I want to get to know you both. I want to be part of your lives. I know I made mistakes." "You didn't make mistakes," Daniel interrupted, his artistic sensitivity making him more emotional than his brother. "You made choices. You chose to abandon our pregnant mother. You chose money over family. Those weren't accidents, they were decisions." David asked the question that cut deepest, "What do you want from us now?" I realized I had no good answer. "I want to be proud of you," I said honestly. "You have no right to pride in our accomplishments," David replied matter-of-factly. "You played no role in our education, our character development, or our success. Our achievements belong to the people who invested in us, not to someone who abandoned us." Daniel added, "We're not angry with you anymore. We used to be, when we were younger. But anger is exhausting, and we had better things to focus our energy on, like school, like helping our mother, like building something meaningful with our lives." "We wish you well," David concluded, "but we don't need you in our lives. We have everything we need, a mother who sacrificed everything for us, a stepfather who chose to love us, and each other." The boys walked away, leaving me standing alone outside their school, finally understanding that some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. 6 months later, I found myself back at the Lagos International Convention Center, working security for another high-profile event. But this time, I was watching from the shadows as my family celebrated even greater achievements. David had signed a partnership agreement with the United Nations to implement his water purification system across 50 African countries. The project would eventually provide clean water to over 10 million people and had earned him international recognition as one of Africa's most promising young inventors. Daniel had been accepted to multiple prestigious art schools with full scholarships, choosing New York University. His latest exhibition had raised 5 million Nigerian nairas for a foundation supporting single mothers. Grace stood at the podium, no longer the struggling young nurse I had abandoned. She was now Dr. Grace Adeyemi, having completed her doctorate while raising her sons. She served on the board of multiple medical organizations and spoke at international conferences. "My sons have taught me," Grace said to the audience, "that success isn't about what you achieve for yourself, it's about what you contribute to others. True wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the lives you touch and the positive changes you create." The audience applauded as David and Daniel joined their mother on stage, along with Dr. Samuel, whose steady presence had helped build this remarkable family. I watched from my security post, tears streaming down my face as I witnessed the life I could have had, should have had, if I had chosen love over greed, family over status, integrity over material wealth. Friends, if you've made it this far in my story, please like this video and hit that subscribe button. Turn on your notification bell because if there's enough demand in the comments, I'll create part 2 of this story showing what happened next in my journey. Comment below. Have you ever seen someone choose temporary pleasure over lasting treasure? And let me know if you want part 2. Your engagement and requests help bring more meaningful stories like this one.